We could eliminate welfare fraud while increasing payments to people who need it. We could shrink the size of the government payroll without hurting anybody except the government workers being laid off. We could eliminate programs while reducing stress on the people who need them. We could do all that, and for people who rely on government programs and for tens of millions of other Americans, make their lives happier, healthier, and more productive. When someone initially regarded as a fringe presidential candidate who most people had never heard of gains a lot of traction by pushing a fringe policy proposal that most people had never heard of, perhaps it's time we took a serious look at that policy proposal. That proposal, and the possible solution to a host of problems, is called Universal Basic Income, or UBI. We're going to look at the history, mechanics, possible funding sources, and effects of UBI on this episode of Progressive Solutions. It'll surprise a lot of people that UBI isn't even close to being a new idea. In fact, UBI proposals go back literally hundreds of years. Sir Thomas More wrote about it in 1516, positing a basic income as a way of reducing crime, particularly theft. His friend, Spanish scholar Juan Luis Vives, took up this idea, and a decade later he crafted a specific proposal for the Dutch city of Bruges. This proposal influenced policy in England and Germany, and it was adopted in Bruges decades later. By the late 18th century, this policy had support from, among others, the French revolutionary the Marquis de Condorcet and the American revolutionary Thomas Paine. Paine actually proposed a system where landowners would have to pay what he called a ground rent to the community, out of which everybody over 21 got an annual payment. There were many proposals throughout the 19th century. By the early 20th century, and especially after World War I, new philosophies in support of UBI began to appear. Bertrand Russell believed that a UBI, along with added benefits for community service, would both incentivize public work and maximize freedom. Meanwhile, British engineer C.H. Douglas developed an idea he called social credit. He determined that workers weren't paid enough on the whole to buy the goods and services they produced. This resulted in dramatic overproduction and eventual inevitable recessions. His social credit was essentially a UBI. UBI has been tried in a lot of places over the last century. Most of these trials have been very short-term, usually a few months or maybe a couple of years, and only extended to maybe a few hundred or a few thousand people. This is generally because funding for these trial plans has been very limited. But the results, at least as far as results can be determined, are fascinating. One complaint is that UBI will lead to laziness. If people don't need to earn a living, they pretty much won't. But trials in Finland, India, and Namibia seem to show just the opposite, that people actually work harder even though they have the basic income. The longest-lasting UBI, in modern history at least, is right here in the United States. The Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians have been sharing casino revenues with their members for about 25 years. The result is that members get better educations and better jobs and live better, happier, and healthier and more fulfilling lives. This is probably due to the fact, as groundbreaking psychologist Abraham Maslow noted, people have what he called a hierarchy of needs. Once one level of needs is met, people automatically adjust by striving to achieve the next level. If UBI meets the first levels, the need for food, shelter, security, then people naturally move to higher levels, the needs for love and esteem and intellectual satisfaction. That's why, even though people are freed from the necessity of work, they actually work harder to achieve these higher needs. Additionally, switching from the current patchwork of social safety net programs to UBI will actually incentivize people to work. Right now, people are penalized for working. Under UBI, there's no penalty for earning more money, so it doesn't take an advanced degree to see how that makes things better. Will some people just sit on their couch and play games all day? Yeah, they certainly will. But most people will actually work harder to achieve more, which means our society will achieve more and happiness all around will rise. Another complaint is that UBI is inflationary. As poor people can afford to spend more, the costs of goods and services will rise. The trials are mostly too limited to determine whether inflation or any significant inflation would result. One trial in Mexico, however, seemed to show something fascinating, that prices might actually fall when more money is infused into struggling communities. The hypothesis for this is that people in these communities don't have access to competitive sources for needed goods and services because what business would want to locate there? Once there's money available, competition increases and prices will fall. We know that a lot of places without a lot of money lack much of what we take for granted, like supermarkets and banks. These so-called food deserts, for example, might only have one or two small shops for groceries. Those shops have to charge more for basic food items, and they don't carry the variety that the rest of us, well, we've gotten used to. Once larger grocery stores and supermarkets open up, and there's some real choice, prices will naturally drop due to competition and also the economies of scale. There might be a little temporary inflation as demand for some goods and services jumps, and as people have the freedom to demand higher wages. But once supply increases to meet the higher demand, that inflation will calm down quickly, and most people will end up with a lot more purchasing power. So why did presidential candidate Andrew Yang hit a nerve with his UBI proposal? There are two probable reasons. The first is that most Americans' disposable incomes have seen a constant decline over the last 40 years, all the while with corporate profits and CEO pay soaring. That's why Donald Trump's 2016 campaign claims that the economy stank, even after several years of economic growth, were so successful. People are desperately looking for a way out of this long decline, and UBI promises to be that way. The second reason is that Yang phrased his policy in terms of making up for job losses due to technology. People have been losing jobs to technology for literally thousands of years. Historically, however, those lost jobs were replaced quickly by new jobs that generally paid more and had better benefits and working conditions. Today's job losses due to computers and robotics, however, aren't being replaced by higher-paying jobs. Oh, sure, there are a few opportunities for computer programmers and engineers, but that's a very small portion of the new jobs. Most new jobs are in the low-wage retail and service sectors. What's worse, large corporations are using technology to switch what used to be full-time jobs to part-time jobs. This means that a lot of people have to get 2 part-time jobs just to get 1 full-time income and deal with the extra stress of juggling the 2 schedules. Corporate lobbying also plays a major part in this decades-long trend. Lobbyists have gotten enormous power for their corporate clients, and workers are paying the price. As a side note, I recommend my video on lobbying reform. It's available up here and in the comments below. All this adds up to a bleak future where people work harder and harder for less and less money. It can't last. Eventually, the economy has to come crashing down for lack of demand. Perhaps that's why so many business tycoons actually support UBI. The list includes Mark Zuckerberg and Chris Hughes of Facebook, Elon Musk of Tesla and SpaceX, Pierre Omidyar of eBay, and Rob Walton of Walmart. Also on the list are Republican former Treasury Secretaries James Baker, George Shultz, and Hank Paulson, and Nobel Prize-winning economist Milton Friedman. UBI is a progressive idea that has lots of conservative support. The final question is, how do we pay for it? And there are a lot of proposals out there. Before we can tap into new revenue sources, however, we should start with one crucial fact. We're paying for a lot of it right now. Any UBI will take the place of a lot of social safety net programs we have right now, including unemployment, food stamps, temporary aid to needy families, earned income credit, supplemental security income, and various forms of housing assistance. We already spend hundreds of billions of dollars every year on these programs. Any plan to pay for UBI starts there and dramatically reduces the so-called cost of switching over. Now let's start with Andrew Yang's proposal, if only because it's been in the news. His proposal is one of the simplest available. In addition to the savings I already mentioned, Yang adds assumed savings based on the idea that, as he put it, people will take better care of themselves, so medical costs, including Medicaid, will go down. The rest is paid for with a value-added tax, or VAT. This tax, which is paid throughout Europe and a lot of other places, is very much like a sales tax, but it's paid along every step of production, distribution, and sales. The basic simplicity of Yang's program is attractive. The problem is with the VAT. Actually, there are 3 problems with the VAT. First, it adds complexity along the supply chain. Suddenly, manufacturers and distributors are going to have to collect and pay a tax that they haven't had to do before, at least not here in the US. Second, a lot of states and cities already have a sales tax, and this new VAT would compete with that sales tax. Those states and cities will probably have to reduce their sales taxes and look elsewhere to collect revenues. That means a whole host of new taxes. Third, it's regressive. It's basically a consumption tax, and wealthy people spend a much lower percentage of their wealth on goods, so they'll pay a much lower percentage on the tax. Fortunately, there are a lot of additional sources available. Let's look at some of them and add them up. For one thing, we could institute a stock transfer tax. Billions of shares of stock are traded on markets all over the country every day. In 2019, over $23 trillion worth of stock was traded on the various markets. When you add in corporate bonds and commodities trades and derivatives, why, that number just skyrockets. If we only taxed a small portion of 1% of those trades, we could raise $100 billion, $200 billion, maybe even more. Then there are what have become known as tax expenditures. These are special tax breaks given out to special interest groups, and they cost us hundreds of billions of dollars every year. We can also tax unearned income, which is income from investments, at the same rate that we tax earned income, like salaries and wages. This could raise a couple of $100 billion as well. The beauty is that almost all of this new revenue falls on the shoulders of the top earners, the people who can easily afford to pay more. It's a progressive adjustment to the tax code. For more on a progressive tax system, see my video on taxes, also available up here and in the comments below. Then we can add in a higher tax bracket for the top 1% of Americans, people earning basically $500,000 or more, and really only on the income above that $500,000. Right now, that top 1% make over $2 trillion a year, raising the top tax bracket just up to 50%, which is still lower than it was all the way from 1933 to 1981, would raise about an additional $300 billion. We haven't even touched corporations yet, so let's reset corporate tax rates and tax codes to where they were in 1987, toward the end of the Reagan years. This would raise an additional $600 billion. We're already up to about $2 trillion in new revenues and savings. This is enough to pay for a UBI that would give $550 a month to every adult in America and $350 a month for every child. And it all comes from skimming the cream off the top. This may not sound like a lot, and it's certainly hard to live on that kind of income, but it would make a tremendous difference in so many people's lives. And one more benefit. As Andrew Yang noted, and I quickly skimmed over, a lot of people will be able to live healthier lives. They'll be able to eat better food, wear better clothes, have better shelter. They'll have more comfortable surroundings. Stress levels will drop. This all adds up to a tremendous drop in medical costs. How much of a drop? We'll just have to find out. Finally, notice that we haven't even touched Social Security. That means that people who are on Social Security would still get those benefit checks, and in addition, they'd get their UBI benefits. This will help a lot of seniors, survivors, and disabled people who are barely scraping by on their Social Security checks. Will all of this happen? Or maybe some of it, or is it just a mirage? Honestly, nobody really knows, because we haven't had a big enough and long enough trial, but from the trials we've seen so far, there's reason for hope. At the very least, a UBI would reset the balance between the very wealthy and the rest of us, a balance that fueled the greatest economy in the history of the planet. So what do you think? Are you ready to try a UBI? If so, what other ways would you like to pay for it? And what other issues would you like to hear about? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear from you. And if you enjoyed this video, please hit that thumbs up button below. Also be sure to subscribe and ring the bell so you'll be notified of future videos as they come out. And spread the word. The more, the merrier. Thanks for watching. Stay progressive.